Good afternoon again, Governor, Premier Harris, members of the media, and other members of council who are sitting again. Good afternoon. I welcome you to this press briefing following the 90th meeting of the Monetary Council, which was held in Montserrat this morning and the better part of today. We have with us for this press briefing the Governor of the Central Bank, Mr. Antoine. We have Dr. Timothy Harris, outgoing chairman of the Monetary Council. We have present, I see my colleague, Honourable Webster from Anguilla, myself. We're at your disposal. I guess we have, I understand that we have other media persons from overseas. You're welcome. And Governor, that's where we are. So this morning you would have known that the Monetary Council, the 99th meeting of the Monetary Council met this morning here in Montserrat, where we transitioned the chairmanship from Dr. Honourable Timothy Harris, Prime Minister, Minister of Finance from St. Kitts and Nevis, and it was transferred to Montserrat. Yours truly, Joseph Easton Farrell. Following the ceremony, handover ceremony, we had a very lively Monetary Council session, which ended a few minutes ago, and we're here to take your questions. We have this morning in the meeting, after the handover ceremony, as I said, the Monetary Council met, and in that meeting, we received the governor's report on the monetary, credit, and financial conditions in the Eastern Caribbean Community Union for the period January to June 2021. In that report, the governor highlighted some specifics: growth and development. As it pertains to growth and development, Council was apprised of the following. The prospects for the global economy remain highly uncertain due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The ECCU Union's main trading partners, the US, the UK, and Canada, are expected to grow by 6.4%, 3.3%, and 5% respectively for 2021. In January of 2021, projections for the ECCU growth was 4%. Overall, economic activity in the Eastern Caribbean Community Union is estimated to have declined in the first quarter of 2021 relative to the comparable period of 2020 due to further constraints related to COVID-19. Heightened uncertainties and risks regarding the ongoing pandemic, coupled with the ongoing impact of volcanic eruptions in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, suggest that the region's growth results for 2021 may be about 1%. The realities recently created by COVID-19, the pace of immunization in the ECCU, and new variants of the virus, accompanied by new lockdowns, curfews, travel protocols, they've all weakened the recovery momentum of our region. The key issues likely to confront the ECCU in the second half of 2021 are: one, securing growth amid rising downside risk, and two, maintaining stability and resilience in the financial sector to support growth. The governor reported on the monetary conditions and credit payment systems in the region. The Monetary Council was apprised of the following. Domestic monetary and credit conditions improved during the first quarter of 2021 relative to 2020, and expectations are for continued improvement for the first half of 2021. Monetary liabilities are projected to increase for January to June 2021 period, albeit at a slower rate relative to the comparable period in 2020. It is expected that as business activity begins to pick up, businesses will once again begin to feel comfortable in hiring leading to a rise in income levels. Credit risk remains a concern and could result in tightening of the terms and conditions of lending. Regional currency arrangements and the payment systems remain strong during the review period. The backing ratio, an average 95% per month in 2021. Though 5 percentage points below the average of 2020, the backing ratio is still well in excess of the legal threshold of 60%. Loan moratorium. As part of our recovery strategy, the Monetary Council agreed with member states to allow members within the region to seek moratorium from their banks. As at 31st May 2021, commercial banks granted moratoria to 6,680 loans with a total outstanding balance of $2,197.7 million. And this represents 16.4% of total loans. The loan payment deferred program is scheduled to expire in September of 2030. The bank will make a final decision on a possible extension on a case-by-case basis within the banks. Eruption of La Soufrière volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. First erupted on the 9th of April 2021. And this eruption had significant impact on the population and the economy as well. We look at the licensed financial institutions within the region, within the monetary union. Licensed financial institutions are engaged in risk assessments, particularly of the exposure, not only in the most severely affected areas of the country, that is St. Vincent I'm referring to, the red zone, but also in previously considered safe areas designated as the green zone. The ECCB continues to liaise with those institutions regarding risk assessment and development due to the continued eruption of the volcano. Having considered the governor's report on monetary credit and financial conditions in the ECCU, the Council decided on the following. 1, to maintain the minimum saving rate at 2% and maintain the discount rate at 2% for short-term lending to governments and 3.5% long-term lending to governments from member states. The key action points and proposed initiatives for coordinated tourism response. The Monetary Council considered the key action points and proposed initiatives for the coordinated tourism response in the Eastern Caribbean region, emanating from the policy session on tourism, which was held earlier this year. The implementation of the Program of Action for Recovery, Resilience, and Transformation of the ECCU economies. The Council received a progress report on the implementation of the Program of Action. The Council commended the bank for the launch of its digital currency, Dcash, which has received a global award. And for your information, Dcash has been rolled out in 4 of our member states earlier this year. And as of September this year, the other 4 remaining member states will be using Dcash as a payment system. The Council also very supportive of the initiatives being developed by the bank, in collaboration with the World Bank and other development partners for a regional renewable energy infrastructure investment facility. The Council reaffirmed its commitment to move forward with the food and nutrition security agenda, including the stated target of reducing the 2019 food import bill by 20% by 25% by 2023. Report from the Technical Core Committee on Insurance. The Monetary Council received the report from the Technical Core Committee on Insurance and was apprised of the following. A final distribution is expected to be made by BICO policyholders in 2021 as efforts continue pace to realize assets and conclude ongoing litigations. A letter was submitted to Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Honourable Dr. Keith Rowley, to request payment of outstanding US $64 million for commitment sum of US $100 million for BICO policyholders, and we await a response from the Honourable Prime Minister. In 2021, the 2021 valuation of the CLICO properties in Barbados earmarked for the ECCU policyholders have been undertaken and submitted. The current valuation is $41.9 million Barbados dollars. At the end of the meeting, the date and venue for the 100th meeting of the Monetary Council. The Council agreed that the 100th meeting of the Monetary Council will convene on Friday, 22nd October, 2021 via video conference. These are the reports from the meeting. We have with us members of the press, myself, the Honourable Dr. Timothy Harris, and the Governor of the Central Bank to answer your questions. Governor and Dr. Harris, are there any points you want to raise before the press speaks to us?
No, Chairman.
Any opening statement from Dr. Harris or the Governor?
No, only to thank you for assuming the chairmanship of the Monetary Council going forward. The expectations are great, but I believe that you are adequate in terms of your experience, temperament, etc., to see us through the next 12 months. So my heartiest congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Chairman, no comments from me. I await the questions.
Good. So we are open to the press. We have 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how much questions you have. And we take one question at a time. And we'll go in circles, so we take one from each media house, and then we can return, unless you have a follow-up. So the floor is now open for questions. Would you state your name and your media house, please? And you can pose a question.
Narissa Golden, Discover Montserrat. Congratulations, Premier, on taking over. You noted that there's concern about the pace of immunization within the currency union. Any recommendations or suggestions as to how, or what's the alternative to increasing the immunization? How is that going to affect reopening of economies, etc.? What are some of the benchmarks that may have been created to help deal with that?
This has been an issue plaguing the council for the past months. We have looked at different options because it's not only a Montserrat. Vaccine hesitancy is a regional and rather, I should say, a worldwide concern. We have looked at different options. First of all, we would prefer if people voluntarily take vaccine. If not, we are looking at different options. We have not pinned ourselves to a specific action as yet, but we have been discussing different approaches in terms of how we can get people vaccinated. And you're quite right. It is critical that people become vaccinated if we're to open our economy and the economy is to grow. In the absence of that, and I don't wish to speak to some of the things that we're talking about because some of it's a little controversial, but we are in fact discussing a couple of ideas which you think we want to roll out as days go by, as time goes by.
Okay. One more in connection to that. I remember early in the crisis, there was a lot of talk of creating travel bubbles. What's of the possibility of trying to drive more regional travel, regional relationships by really solidifying that bubble and encouraging that transportation, whether it's also exports, imports from within the region, the ECCU.
Can I defer to the Honourable Dr. Timothy Harris on this one?
Sure.
You have the question, sir?
Thank you very much, Chairman. The notion of the travel bubble is still alive, and indeed at meetings, not necessarily of the Monetary Council today, but at CARICOM and at OECS heads, we did look at how we are going to spur interregional travel in particular, and in that regard, there is a general commitment to reduce the taxes and imposts in relation to travel with a view to make it less costly, more affordable, and as a consequence of that, to see increased travel between member states of the region. So that is an ongoing recommendation. I think in our presentations in relation to tourism at the level of the Monetary Council, that also commitment had come forward that member states would see the best they can do to reduce the cost of travel within and to promote it. Member states, by and large, are at the same level of development, facing some of the similar challenges in terms of the COVID-19, and in the context of that reality, the notion of the bubble has come, and it is really something that we will have to work on. So we are committed to that in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think that we have announced a reduction in the travel tax that will take place imminently as part of the commitment to the regional agenda. I want to just very quickly, with your leave, Chair, make a comment in relation to the vaccination. The vaccination program, of course, is very critical for the sub-region, and even more so for those member states who have a lot at stake in terms of tourism. That is for which tourism remains the critical driver of economic growth. Globally, I think it is accepted that high vaccination rate is the only pathway to the successful opening up of economies. And that is why everywhere, the critical indicator now is how people are doing in terms of first dose. How are we doing in terms of the second dose when people could be declared to be fully vaccinated? The higher we can drive those numbers, the safer it will be, less the likelihood that we are going to have these stop and starts that have happened over the past 12 months as we attempt to deal with the spikes in the virus that is happening. There is no, as it were, silver bullet. The target that has been set generally is that we should try to reach as high as 70% in the first instance to achieve herd immunity. But the goal actually is to get everyone, every adult within our space to become vaccinated and to do so voluntarily. I think it is urgently required that our people understand around the world there is a shortage of vaccines, and member states have it, and yet there is a hesitancy to take it, and that is regrettable because it will not always, and it has not always been available to us here. So I would want to re-emphasize your point that there is an urgency for our people to make the commitment to protect themselves, their families, their communities, and their country. And there is only one known way to do that. It's really through vaccination. And the sooner this can be done, the better it will be. The higher we are, the better we are. Less problems we will have because, in a sense, there will be less opportunity for transmission among the population. So I just want to say, while we have been using at least in St. Kitts, and one of the prescription really is the 70% vaccination rate, it is just a target, a guide. The ideal is to get closer to 100, as difficult as that may be. But 70% give us a reasonable breathing space.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the panel and chairman. Question, and I'll leave this question open to the governor or you, Mr. Chairman. In response to the lockdown and closure of borders in 2020, Governor Antwine recommended a deferral of payments of loans and mortgages to local banks. In response to small to medium-sized businesses that are affected by these very same lockdowns and closure of borders, what recommendation has the Monetary Council or the ECCB in general made to the local governments and the local banks to assist these small businesses to cope in these challenging financial times?
I yield to Dr. Antwine, Governor of the Central Bank.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as you indicated in the communique, that moratorium is expected to currently scheduled to expire at the end of September 2021. We are currently discussing with the commercial banks a possible extension on a case-by-case basis, because we do recognize that there are still needs, real needs, given the situation with tourism. We also know, of course, of the situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the volcano. So we are going to be sensitive to that, and we are going to work with the banking community to do that. We also have tried to urge that financial counseling will also be given, because we want to make sure that when persons access that facility, they do so without incurring additional or too much additional debt burden for themselves. And so to make sure that they requisite information when they're making that decision. So that's on that, and you spoke to that. Now, on the question of additional support for small businesses, you would have heard of our partial credit guarantee scheme that was launched in October last year. The chairman would have spoken to that as well. And basically, that is to help small businesses. So loans of up to $300,000, guaranteed at 75%. That's $225,000. And so far, they have been rolling out this program in our member countries. We now have 16 financial institutions involved, 2 development banks, and we expect more to come on stream before the end of the year. The idea is to be able to provide direct support to small businesses. And we also have received additional external financing, which Prime Minister Harris may wish to speak of if he so chooses, which would provide additional support for small businesses, especially our women who own and manage businesses. So that is one particular initiative. We've also, of course, launched Dcash, and I want you to make the connection because Dcash is a business-to-business, person-to-person payment instrument. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's safer. So again, small businesses will have an opportunity to use Dcash to be able to actually transact business and to be able to cut their costs in terms of the payment services, and what they pay for payments right now in the region. So those are 2 immediate things that come to mind in terms of what ECCB has done, is doing. We continue, of course, to do quite a lot of financial literacy, financial empowerment courses to help small businesses, because as you would appreciate, it is not just money. Money is definitely one of the issues, but as we have discovered, it is also helping people to put a business plan together, helping you to strategize about the business. In this environment, helping you to change your business model. And I mean, if you're going to be resilient in this period, you have to be digital. You have to be digital. So a lot of small businesses have found themselves needing help to make the transition from their old traditional business model to a digital model, whether it's providing food, whether it is advertising online, whether it's delivering services, any number of reasons or scenarios, you need to have a digital presence. And that has come through very clearly in this pandemic. And so we have been providing support for small businesses in terms of helping to guide them with respect to their planning and making that transition. So those are just 3 areas where we are actively helping small businesses right now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Governor. Permit me to recognize my colleague, Premier Webster of Anguilla. Welcome, sir. If needs be, I will pull you into the question. We have with us members of the overseas media as well. So I'm going to go to 2 media persons from St. Kitts. One, Glenn Barth, SKN Nevis Line. Can you pose your question, please?
Good afternoon to the panel. My question is this. This pandemic has really highlighted our over-dependence on tourism. And Governor Antoine this morning referred to the need to be innovative when we look ahead, the need for a lot of integration or collaboration. My question is, to what extent can we begin to promote a more indigenous, to the OEC, so to speak, kind of development process, using the pandemic as the backbone or the incentive for us to collaborate in a more direct, active, and strategic way to get our economies more sustainable and less susceptible to external shocks?
Governor?
Well, I will start with your favorite subject, Premier, Chairman Farrell, and that is food and nutrition security. What can we do? We can feed ourselves. We can do a much better job of feeding ourselves. The pandemic has exposed the fact that we are too dependent on the rest of the world outside of our region for our food. And all of us had to contemplate the possibility, what if the ships from Miami do not arrive on time? That was a real concern last year when the pandemic began. We saw the lines at the supermarkets. And by the way, we have a blog on this issue you can check out on our website or Facebook page. But the point is, we can feed ourselves. And that's why you will see the mention made of cutting the food import bill by 25% over the next 3 years. The 2019 food import bill of $1.6 billion, cutting that by 25%, that's $400 million in savings by 2023. That would create jobs. We'd be eating healthier food, which goes to better health outcomes, and we'll be saving foreign exchange. Win, 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 win. We have to do that. Secondly, we have to move forward on the digitization of our economies. And people have to understand, when we speak about digital transformation, this is not about Bitcoin or crypto. I mean, a lot of times that's what people get. This is about enabling all sectors of the economy to function in a highly competitive, resilient, and productive way. I give the example all the time. A fisher ought to be able to upload his catch using a smartphone and sell that catch before he lands or she lands on shore. That is possible. That's where we need to go. That's technology for fisher folk. If you take it to farming, aquaponics, hydroponics, where you can use technology in these shade houses, in these greenhouse arrangements, to actually prepare and produce crops without the vagaries of pests and diseases and climate, and have these delivered to market on time and in sufficient quantities and with the reliability that is demanded by the hotels or by the supermarkets. That's enabling farming using technology. Education, and I can go on and on. So that this notion of digital transformation touches and concerns all sectors in our economy. This is not a young people thing. This is not a technology thing. This is an all sectors enabler. And that would make a big difference right now. And finally, there's a lot that could be said. I would say we now need to embrace the blue economy. Too often, we think of our region as small island developing states. And yes, we're small islands. But what we don't sufficiently recognize is that we are large ocean states. We have large oceans, relatively speaking. far bigger than our land mass and our landscapes. And it is now for us to take an approach that really addresses the blue economy, which includes tourism, fisheries, energy, renewable energy, and a number of other things, rather than just tourism. And that requires a shift in paradigm, outlook, and a growth mindset. And so feed ourselves, digital transformation, adoption of a blue economy approach, those are three specific areas which, if addressed, will help us to address our overdependence on tourism. And I must say, let us be very clear, tourism is not going to go away. We have the infrastructure, there's pent-up demand, but we can be more resilient, meaning less dependent on one dominant sector, if we're able to do these three things. And those are just three examples. Obviously, there are other things we can consider and must consider as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Could I
Thank
add,
you, Governor.
Could I add in
And
that?
just to reiterate,
Could I add in that, Chairman, the last point which the Governor made, I think, needs to be perhaps crystallized, that tourism has been good to the region. Indeed, it is one sector in which we have shown incredible competitiveness. We are part of the largest demand destination with respect to cruise tourism, and that is a plus for us. We have shown that notwithstanding our own small sizes, a number of us have been able to find niches. Anguilla, for a very long period of time, had done very well in the high-end market, and that has done quite a lot for job creation, for foreign exchange earnings, etc. What we perhaps need to do is to diversify more around the tourism, because tourism will, for the foreseeable future, continue to be part of the critical economic driver, economic base of some of our countries, because we do not have a lot of options. We have to face the reality that in small island states, you are confined to some extent. And while we become innovative and try to undo or lessen some of those constraints, the realities of that would be with us for some time to come. So as we talk about tourism, we see the necessary link in terms of food security for ourselves, food security that caters to the wishes of the tourists who we now have in our jurisdictions to feed. We have seen, for example, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, with the coming of Park Hyatt, it has been a model facility in terms of giving support, in terms of the procurement of local supplies and featuring this critically on its table, and that has helped to improve the quality of living, quality of life for a number of our fisher folks in St. Kitts and Nevis. What else is there for us to do? If we were to look at how the world has traditionally played, manufacturing, that, of course, is always challenging for small island states. St. Kitts and Nevis has been for a very long time the largest exporter of merchandise products to the USA, largely our electronic plant and the industrial estate. But over time, the competitiveness of that has basically been challenged with lower wages coming out of China and elsewhere. So none of these economic drivers, none of them represents the ideal for us. It will always be a challenge for innovation, creativity, and for us to be able to stick to certain things, some of the advantages that we have. The financial services, for example, has been strong and still is relatively strong for some of our smallest member states. Well, the BVI is not in the context of our currency union, a member state, but for that country, that has been perhaps the largest earner of government revenues for a very long period of time. The sister island of Nevis, that has been significant for a very long period of time, but that too is being challenged. I say that to make the point that almost every area now is open to competition, and we just have to be more competitive, more disciplined, and our people, sticking to the industry and being willing to learn and outdo their competitors elsewhere. Some of our habits, of course, at the personal level, in terms of how we see work, how committed we are to finish tasks, those are going to become critical. In terms of our agility, our ability to respond, then as we develop our digital framework and move more into that, we will be able to do more. And lastly, I want to say that for St. Kitts and Nevis, way back in 1984, we had carved out a niche in terms of our citizenship by investment program. And that has served us relatively well. But even then, it has now become very competitive an industry. So tourism is competitive. We have to stand and fight in the areas in which we have strength. I always marvel at the high price of those hotels' rooms in Anguilla that have excluded me for a very long period of time. And I'm waiting to see what happens now that we are having the interregional initiative. But Anguilla has been competitive for a very, very long period of time. So there are challenges. I would say we shouldn't be dismayed by them. We are smart enough to try to get to the top nonetheless.
Thank you, members. Indeed, COVID has brought us challenges, but it also opened up for new opportunities for all of us. And digital transformation is one of those opportunities that we can use to build our economies. So thank you very much for that input. I now turn to Andrea Hugh from SLN Newsline, or SKL.
Good afternoon. My question centers around the comment made by Prime Minister Harris regarding vaccination and being one of the main solution in navigating the pandemic. But with the rise of vaccine hesitancy across the region, and also the issue of workers, some workers considering, or some entities believing that workers' rights may be violated if entities or companies, private companies, compel them to vaccinate. How does the region the member countries intend to navigate that aspect, to have persons vaccinated while at the same time not running the risk of violating their workers' rights or their constitutional rights?
I don't know if Prime Minister Webster would want to touch that.
Certainly, good afternoon, and appreciate it. Congratulations, Premier, ascending to the chairmanship. Certainly, he asked a very good question that we all are grappling with. Here in Anguilla, we have been discussing and are looking at legislation towards, making it mandatory for workers who have unavoidable and close contact with the public or with visitors, that they have to be vaccinated. And if they refuse to be vaccinated, if they're eligible, then making it that they have to be tested on a regular basis every 1 to 2 weeks at their own expense. And that's what we are looking at right now. And certainly we get some pushback in that regard. We are also looking at, in terms of the hospitality industry, we do know that, in the spa and gym and things like that, and that is also unavoidable contact. And we have made it right now, the spas can only be open if they have all the spa attendants have to be fully vaccinated. And this is what we are grappling with, and we'll continue to push as we go ahead, because we do want to get to that magic number of 70%. We know that is the minimum requirement. Here in Anguilla, we're at about 61% of our target population has had the first dose and about 55% second dose. And so we keep trying to get persons to voluntarily get vaccinated. And we feel that it's, as the Prime Minister said, the only way we can get to where we can safely open the economy is we have to have the level of vaccination that gives our people that assurance that we can decrease the chance of infection, transmission, and severe illness and death.
Thank you very much. And just add a note, within the Monetary Council, we have been looking at options, and Premier Webster have raised some of them, whether we can make it mandatory. We do have a constitution, and there's some legal framework we operate in, but there's some of us who think that we have to take the bull by the horn and dictate some actions if we are to reach those levels of herd immunity. And so the discussion will go on within the coming weeks as to whether we can legally or not do certain things. But some governors, some leaders are intent on making sure that we protect our population, because we have a right to protect our workers, our employers, as well as our employees. And every worker who's not vaccinated run the risk of transmitting the virus to people with whom they're working. And that includes the public service as well. So we are looking at options, and we will continue to do that, and we'll let you know what we have come up with. Thank you very much. I now turn to Montserrat for their own questions.
Good afternoon, Premier, and I must say congratulations. My question is to the Premier or the Governor, whoever will answer that. With the recent sale of RBC to the consortium, Bank of Montserrat cannot offer certain local services, such as credit card, cash withdrawals from the ATM and such. How does the ECCU plan to support these small banks to offer these services?
Thank you. I'll try to answer the first part, and then I'll bring in Governor Antoine. I'm not running from your question. Clearly, I have raised the concerns with the governor a few weeks ago in terms of the limitations that we have at this moment with Bank of Montserrat. But let me just, from the outset, say, Bank of Montserrat is going through a teething problem. They have acquired the assets of RBC like other countries, because we are one of the 8 member states who have acquired RBC's assets. And now they have an influx of clients, and so they are going through a teething problem. We understand that one of the arrangements with RBC was that they were supposed to transfer the credit card arrangement. That did not happen. But I can assure you that Bank of Montserrat is presently working on they do have a credit card component, the 4 Cs, but the Visa is what they're working on. And we are government in discussion with BOM in terms of coming up with some agreement as to how best we can do it. Because it has implications for development or economy. It has implications for the tourism sector. For instance, person come to the island and they want to go to the ATM and get some cash. They can't do it. So I had a discussion with the bank manager, I think 3 days ago. And in terms of our local payment system, that is up and running. But in terms of the credit card system, they're working, and the government have taken a decision to work along with the bank to get that up and running. Can't give a timeline, but we are working with them. Governor, that's as far as I can go.
Chairman, I just want to confirm that.
Right?
Yes, thank you. Chairman, I do want to confirm that you have raised this issue with me. Clearly, you are very concerned about it. And what I've said to you, and I recommit to do, is to work with Montserrat and the regional indigenous banks to see how we can address this matter. So I believe part of that solution is a coming together of our indigenous banks. They came together to buy the RBC operations in the ECCU, and it is now for them to continue to work together to deliver services that meet the expectations of their customers. And I believe that solution will lie in a cooperation, functional cooperation. That is, in fact, the model that they did with the credit cards. You mentioned 4 Cs, Caribbean Credit Card Corporation. That is a coming together of our indigenous banks to be able to provide credit card services. And that was done, at least 20, maybe more than 20 years now. That coming together took place. We are also working with our indigenous banks on creating a shared services platform for risk and compliance. And then there are other areas. So the answer, I believe, lies in the working together of indigenous banks, because they spread the costs, they lower the risk, they spread the costs, lower the costs, and they also are able to improve the services to customers. So that's an ongoing discussion that we're having with the indigenous banks. And I think I could just end by saying to the people of Montserrat to be patient. It will improve. And yes, whenever you do a takeover like that, it's a big deal. It does require a big transition. I know the staff and the management of Bank of Montserrat are working very hard. They had to work very hard to acquire RBC, and they have to work very hard in the transition phase. And then it's like, you know, a plane climbing, and you have a little turbulence, and then you're going to get to a point in time in altitude when the flight, you have smooth air, and you get a smooth ride. So I think that's where we're going now. It's going up, 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 up. As it makes the transition, things will settle, customers will see improved services, and ECCB stands ready to support Bank of Montserrat and all our indigenous banks as we find solutions to these issues. We've done it, you know, and continue to do it with de-risking. We're doing it now with the AMLA, the Anti-Money Laundering Act that was passed in 2020 in the US. Obviously, you know, there are other things which I will get into at a later stage. But we believe our indigenous banks have to work together, and they are working together. And we are encouraging them to do more of that to address the particular concerns that you've raised.
Thank you, Governor. And we have every confidence that Bank of Montserrat will rise to the challenge. Thank you very much.
James White from Radio Montserrat. And let me first say congratulations to you, Mr. Premier, on assuming the chairmanship of the Monetary Council. And of course, you know that great things are expected of you as far as Montserrat is concerned. But I like to just piggyback on some of the comments that were made by Dr. Harris and of course, Governor Antwine, and on the whole idea of diversification and, you know, moving away from this over-reliance on tourism. Now, we look at the ECCU and we found that growth, you know, has declined, and more so the chairman mentioned over the first quarter of 2021. Now, we also look at securing growth and stability going forward and putting those support mechanisms in place, you know, so that we can achieve that growth. Now, what are some of the prerequisites? I know that we've been speaking or hinting at some of the things that could happen. What are some of the prerequisites that we should put in place to ensure that we create what we want to call this enabling environment so that these measures or initiatives can take off to support us, to support the economies, because we realize that unity is strength. You know, each individual territory has its uniqueness and, of course, its strengths. How can we build on that? What are some of the prerequisites that we need to document to ensure that we move forward?
Dr. Harris?
Harris or Governor Antwine, both of you can take it up.
Well, I mean, I would start with the first prerequisite for me is a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is simply reframes problems as opportunities. And someone with a growth mindset actually is more resilient in times of adversity, because rather than seeing a problem and just fixating on a problem, they see opportunity. You reframe it and you see opportunity. And the chairman just said it. In this crisis, I don't even want to call it a crisis, in this pandemic, in this challenging period, there are significant opportunities. Look at what we've been able to do with digitalization, forced to do, but with good results. It's uneven in some countries, but the reality is that we have been able to do far more in this period with digital than perhaps we would have had we not had the pandemic. And so for me, the first prerequisite is a growth mindset. See opportunities. You know, we have a choice. When we see a situation, we can do two things. We can curse the darkness or we can light a candle. And I always try to light a candle. But the reality is that the prerequisite is a growth mindset. Secondly, we have regional solidarity. And that has shown through very clearly in this period. We're small, but when we come together, we are so much stronger as a result. Look at our central bank. Look at our currency union. Look at how we've been able to manage with our limited resources in this period across the region. So for me, those are top of mind, the growth mindset and regional solidarity. Clearly, I think we have to have a plan. And that's the third one. And that's why the Monetary Council came up with a program of action for recovery, resilience, and transformation. It's a bold plan. You know, it looks at very practical stuff, nothing theoretical. What the countries must do, what the region, the central bank or the OECS Commission must do. Well, mainly the central bank, because we own it. We sponsored it, meaning that, you know, we are responsible with the governments to implement. You need a plan. An idea is one, but you need a plan. When you have a plan, you've got to put resources to the plan. I always think about a vision as what could be and should be. What could be are your possibilities. What should be are your desired realities. And then you have to build a bridge to move from the possibilities to desired realities. And that bridge is a plan, a strategic plan, a program of action with resources and commitment to implement in a timely fashion. And I think we have a program of action. The food and nutrition agenda is part of that. The payment system is part of that. What we're doing in terms of internet connectivity, cybersecurity, data protection, that's also part of that, you know, just to give you an example. And so those three things, I'll stop there. Growth mindset, regional solidarity, a plan, which is for us the program of action. I think those are three important prerequisites, ingredients, if you will, to address this particular challenge and to make significant progress.
No, thank you, Mr. White, for the question. I turn to, we have two, Leroy Williams from SKNIS and Carlton Pickering from Anguilla.
Good afternoon to everyone. I have two questions, and both of them are for the governor. The first one is, what are the growth projections for the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union for 2022? And the second question, Governor Antoine, is, how would you characterize the chairmanship of the outgoing chairman for the ECCU, Dr. the Honourable Timothy Harris? How would you characterize his leadership during that period?
Right. Well,
that he was at the helm.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and I will take this opportunity and ask the indulgence of the council members to thank you, Mr. Williams, for the sterling role you are playing in helping manage the COVID-19 pandemic in St. Kitts and Nevis. As a resident in the Federation, as governor of the central bank where the bank is headquartered, we are grateful for what you and the entire task force have done and are doing in this period. And as a fellow public servant, I know this job is thankless. So very often you get licks rather than kudos. But I want to say on behalf of the entire ECCB team, we are very grateful. St. Kitts and Nevis has done well in managing this thing, no question about that. And I want to thank you for that. I mean, I see the constant questions, the constant, you're there almost every day, and for a long time you were there every day, and now it's regular, and I just wanted to say that. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. I know that's not what you intended, but I seized it nonetheless to say thank you. In terms of the growth forecast for 2022, at the moment we're projecting about 7%. So 2021, 1%, because tourism is still slowly recovering, but when it comes to 2022, we are looking at about 7%. That, of course, depends on what happens with tourism in particular and the safe reopening. And you cannot talk about the safe reopening of tourism without talking about the vaccine rollout. Look at the example of cruise ships. Cruise ships are coming back in. Limited capacity. Some people are complaining that the cruise ships are not touching the small man. Well, unless the small man is vaccinated, that is going to be a challenge. Because you do not want to expose the so-called small man to being infected and to becoming sick and possibly losing his or her life. This is the predicament our governments find themselves in. They want to open up the place. They want to have people do business, but they also have a first responsibility to protect. help our governments by taking the responsibility to vaccinate. I make that personal appeal to you, all of you, because if not, we put you in harm's way, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So please help us to help you. We have to do this together, all right? Because we cannot close indefinitely, but if we open and people are not protected, you're going to have difficulties. If we open and people have access without being the requisite protection, you're going to see cases rise, and then people will say we need to close and lock down. And I am no fan of lockdowns. Lockdowns are necessary sometimes, but I'm no fan because of what it does for businesses, because of the impact it has on, it's a blunt instrument, to be quite honest. And it's particularly punishing for those who've done the right thing. And there are small business people who've done the right thing. They've taken all the protocols seriously, they've vaccinated themselves and their staff, and they're trying to make an honest living, and then they find themselves in that position. But then, what does a country do if you have a spike? So that is the conundrum. That's the predicament. And I'm just making an appeal personally for people to consider and to take the vaccine. I have personally taken it, I'm fully vaccinated, and I want to encourage you to do that. In terms of Prime Minister, yeah, I didn't forget the question. The chairman's tenure. As I said in my opening statement, it has been a highly consequential tenure. If you look at the number of things that the Monetary Council did, the Central Bank did over the last year, without a doubt, it was highly consequential. So whether it is looking at the program of action which we developed as a response, whether it is looking at the support for vaccine rollout, the $1 million to get the vaccines, because we got the initial donation, but we had to move it, get it to the countries and move it to the member countries, whether it is what we did for St. Vincent and the Grenadines in a time of need, whether it is how we've addressed the loan deferral program with our Bankers Association, whether it is with respect to the reappointment of a governor, the appointment of a new deputy governor, whether it is in respect of the launch of the Partial Credit Guarantees Corporation, which we did in October. Any number of things that you look at, this has been arguably the most difficult or one of the most difficult years in the existence of the currency union, but also when you look at the report card, the scorecard, highly consequential. So I want to again use this opportunity to thank Prime Minister Harris for his stewardship, for his leadership, and I know the council members also appreciate his work over the last year.
Thank you, Governor, and so say all of us. Mr. Pickering from Anguilla.
Good afternoon to the members of the council. Carlton Pickering from KCN Television Anguilla. I have two questions, and the first is on transportation, air and seaport. What progress are we making in this area? Because this is an ongoing problem, not only in the Caribbean, more so in particular the OECS, transportation, air and seaport. What progress are we making there? And my second question, how are we going to manage this pandemic for continuity collectively in the OECS, mental health, poverty, at-risk groups, food and nutrition, and also manufacturing that would need raw material? How are we going to help to finance even the small and medium-sized enterprises? These are things that we need to look at, and I would like to hear from you gentlemen, how are we approaching this? Thank you.
Governor, I will take the first part and I'll defer to yourself or Dr. Harris on the second part. In terms of sea and air transport, it's absolutely critical for development. When we talk about food security, the problem we have in the region is that in some places, there's not a shortage of food. It is getting that food or that food from one country to the next. And so if we talk about food security, transportation has to play an integral part of that process. There's no way we can talk about food security without being able to move the surplus food from one member state to the next. And so it's absolutely critical. And in a broader CARICOM region, we're also speaking about the fast fare and other things, which have been on the table for years. But seriously, the Monetary Council, we must take action now to be able to transport food from one place to the next. We're not going to achieve our goal of food security in the region unless we have access to transport, whether by sea or air. So it is critical for all of us. And we will, during my tenure, I'm certain that I will work with the governor and others to ensure that we find a solution to this this topic. Thank you very much. Governor?
I can add at this stage, except to say that regional solidarity. So a lot of this is working together. I don't think you know the kind of effort. Obviously, I see it a lot more closely than perhaps you do. But the effort our governments have made and are making to secure vaccines. I mean, we have the challenge now where, you know, people are deciding not to or making a choice that they're more afraid of the vaccine than the virus, so they're not vaccinating. Because it's really fair. The currency is fair. Fair is what is dominating our thinking, some of us. But there have been so much efforts behind the scenes to secure vaccines to enable our people to be protected and to be able to reopen these economies. When you look at some of our neighboring countries, they have not had access to the vaccine that we've had. They're larger than us. They may be deemed to be more powerful, but yet our governments with skill and determination and dexterity have been able to secure vaccines for our people. That's a tremendous credit to them. And I will say that because I've seen it up close and personal. I was speaking to a country, which I remain nameless, a colleague in a country, central bank governor, and he would say, well, you guys actually have a luxury of people saying they don't want to take it. My staff are asking me when they can get it, and we don't have it. So the reality is that a lot of work has been done behind the scenes to secure this for our region, and I just want people to appreciate that, because no government wants to have its citizens dependent on it forever to help with income support. The best option is for people to go back to work. And I would say people also don't want to be dependent on the state. You want to have your own livelihood, have a sense of your own self-worth, the dignity about working and earning and feeling a sense of fulfillment. And so we want to release people to get back to work. And when that happens, people are happier, less mental health issues, less domestic violence, more government revenue, more benefits in the economy, more jobs created. There's a virtuous circle. So in sum, working together. And I think we are seeing that, and I would simply urge that. And whatever the situation is, whether it's shipping, whether it's food and nutrition, whether it is financial stability, on and on and on, the fundamental ingredient is working together. And I feel very confident that our countries are committed to that. And that really gives me a lot of encouragement sitting in this particular capacity.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Just quickly on that issue of the continuity, to make the brief point that it was not just businesses, but an entire society whose continuity was challenged and is being challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of the things we took for granted, certainly in the new order created by the pandemic, could do no more. Distance, for example, became one of the biggest show of love. If you love your family, you had to avoid getting into contact with some of the elderly folks when we started this pandemic. I remember one Mother's Day, the CMO said, well, you will have to give some distance, because these people are vulnerable and we had to do everything to protect them. So the society as we know it is being changed. And we really need to wake up to what that means in how we are going to move forward. And ultimately, for the continuity of the society, we are going back for what we had prayed for when the pandemic started. We had to have a vaccines, that all the pharmaceutical measures, important as they were, the wearing of the mask, the sanitizing, etc., and they still continue to be, at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to call it the silver bullet, but the most important tool is the vaccination. That allows us to get back together as a community. That will allow us to get our children safely in our schools. That will allow us to go back to the churches again. That will allow us to go back to our workplaces, knowing that we are safe. So I want to endorse the call. And one of the thematics approaches that we developed in St. Kitts and Nevis was that we needed an all-of-society approach. The governor has described it another way. All of us have to recognize that this pandemic has its own rules. It's not a respecter of persons or locations. And I believe in this matter, we can't have neutrality. There's some people who are deliberately misleading people on the pandemic, some for political purposes. On this matter, there have to be unity. If you are for the safety of people, what is the way out? Vaccination. And you can't be saying you're for vaccination, but wait for Cuba. Wait for Cuba. By the time, what will happen to all of us? Cuba has no vaccine up to this point in time approved by the World Health Organization. And we have said that that is the gold standard that will guide the use of vaccines in our country. And this kind of dance that some people are doing for opportunistic purposes is at the heart of some of the vaccination hesitancy we are seeing in our countries, and we have to call it out. We have to really work together. Solidarity knows no boundaries. And lastly, there's a passage, I think it's on Philippians, and the governor will perhaps help me, or the incoming chair, the new chairman, and it speaks to the need for our people to elevate the interests of others beyond theirs. I think that when we get there, we begin not just to focus on individual rights, but how in the exercise of our individual rights responsibly, we create a safer and stronger community for all of us. It's not just about us and our right. It's how do you exercise that right that add value to the survivability of all of us. It's about you, yes, but also about your family, also about your community, also about the country, which from time to time, as the virus takes hold of an unvaccinated and at times the vaccinated, and we have to get into the shutdown, how that destabilizes an entire society, an entire country, and we have to be admonished to a higher calling.
Chairman,
thank you very much,
Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Harris. I'm going to give you a wrap up. You want to add to this, Governor?
No, I was just complying with the request of the outgoing chairman, Dr. Harris. Philippians 3:3, don't be selfish, don't try to impress others, be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. And I think that is the text in which we referred, Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, and that certainly is applicable to the vaccine rollout program, where we have to think about the children who have to go back to school in September, and they have to be safe. The children in this region have gone through a difficult year. Not everybody is equal when it comes to connectivity. That's a fact. And if we're not careful, we're not going to just lose a year, we could lose a generation. We have to be very mindful of that. And so, to position our children for success, we have to be able to reopen safely and have the assurance that we will not have disruptions where people have to go back online, because online does not work for everybody. And spare a thought for the parents who have to also be at home helping their children. And I speak not just of my dear wife, but I speak of my colleagues in the central bank and all the women around this region, many of whom have borne a disproportionate burden of caring in this pandemic. Chairman, I rested there.
Thank you very much, Governor. I feel the passion. I think that is the passion of all of us as members of the Monetary Council in relation to the state of the economy and the state of the vaccine in the region. It is absolutely critical that we encourage, we implore, we do everything possible to get our members, our citizens to take the vaccine. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of this press briefing. What I'll do, I'll ask members of the team to do a final wrap-up, final comments, starting with Premier Webster, and then I move the ranks. Premier Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that you have, done a great job on your first day, and looks like we have a great year ahead. I too would like to thank outgoing Chairman Prime Minister Harris for the stellar job he's done of navigating us through this pandemic as members of the Monetary Council. And certainly there have been a lot of issues that came up, renewing the governor, recruiting a deputy governor, coming up with all the different programs, and also having these monthly meetings regarding renewable energy, tourism, digital transformation, etc. It just shows that it's the regional solidarity that the governor spoke about. It's real, and it's certainly, even though we are separate islands, we basically are one, just separated by bodies of water. And I certainly want to say I have learned, certainly as the newest member, maybe Minister Camillo came in after me and Minister Bowen as ministers of finance. But I certainly, as a new head of government, have learned a lot from the governor, from the outgoing chair, and certainly from Reverend Farrell, who continues to be an inspiration to me. So I want to thank everyone for participating. Certainly a great meeting today, and I look forward to a good year ahead. And those growth projections of 7%, I hope that we can get that up into double digits, but we have to vaccinate. And I tell that to people of Anguilla every time I get near a microphone or near a person. I say, we got to vaccinate. That's the only way we can save our economy, save our lives, and save our country. So thank you again, and may God continue to bless us all.
Governor and Premier Harris, your final comments?
Well, just to say thank you to all my colleagues for the opportunity reposed in me to serve as the chair. It had been a very challenging and demanding time, not just at the local level, but regionally. But together, we did make it. So thanks for solidarity, and we demonstrated that solidarity knows no boundaries. And we have worked together. We have come up with a practical plan for the recovery, the resilience, and the transformation of our currency union. And I hope that in due time, the citizens and residents will see benefit from it. So again, thank you, and just again to wish you well as you take over the mantle of leadership.
Governor?
To God be the glory. So I give thanks to the outgoing chairman, Prime Minister Harris, and again, I just want to extend my best wishes to him as he continues to serve. Chairman, you did a wonderful job today on your first day, 6 hours in, and I want to thank you, Premier Farrell, for your work, and I certainly look forward to working with you on all the matters, but especially on that food and nutrition security agenda, which I know is something that you're very passionate about. Also happy to see Premier Webster, always very supportive, always there. He might be new, but he's very committed to this, and I'm grateful. Thank you, Premier. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. It's only for me to say thank you very much. Prime Minister Harris, I thank you very much for the leadership that you have shown over the past year. Sometimes the Spirit speaks to you. Last year was my turn, and I defer to you, maybe because I knew what was happening. Thank you very much for the work that you have done in terms of leading the council. You have been very articulate in your approach. You have been very steady on your moving forward. I want to thank very much for your support. And you're not going anywhere soon. You're here still, and we have to call on you for your support and advice. Thank you very much. Governor, I want to thank you for your support over the past year and even today, the past weeks, and your staff for the work that you have been doing and continue to do. I promise you that I will work with you best I can, and I look forward for a year of success within the Monetary Council. My colleague, within the members of the council, thank you very much for the support. And of course, I look forward for your support going forward. Members of the press, thank you for coming. But let me leave this word with you. It's vaccine. There's no way out of this pandemic. There's no way that we can return to normality. There's no way our economies can rise again. There's no way our children can be safe in school. There's no way we can rise again unless all of us are vaccinated. The saying is, no one is safe until all of us are safe. Please do. And I expect the media to do their part. I know there's hesitancy out there, but we have to find some way of breaking that plague, if I want to call it that way. And you have a role to play in helping us. And if you're not vaccinated yet, please go and take yours so that you can tell others. Because if you're not vaccinated, you really can't convince anybody else. I am fully vaccinated, and so I can speak clearly. But I know that unless we take the vaccine, and it's safe. I've had mine the 8th of February, thereabout. I'm still here. So please. And once again, thank you very much, media, for coming along. Thank you, Governor and Prime Minister Harris and Premier Webster. And we look forward to seeing you again. So until then, from Montserrat, bye.